Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Secret Sunday session. Today I'm joined by Emma from Pippin Girl. Welcome, Emma.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's incredible to have you on, and I'm thrilled, obviously, to have you on as a guest on our podcast after we've, shared the space in terms of having you part of the Secret Burden workshops previously, and just as well communicating and connecting in this space, I think is so powerful. And I love what you do. I can't wait to share what you do as well as the insights in this space. But before we jump into that, in uncovering who you are and what you do in this space, I just want to say a big happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. It's so
hmm
beautiful to have this day where we can celebrate you or a mother-like figure that is in your life or someone that is representing who we believe to be those mothers that I think are doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. So very grateful to have this day. I know a big shout out to my mum, very grateful to have her in my life and in my corner. But we know it is Mother's Day, and that's why I think it's really important to have really important conversations around the role of being a mum in terms of even in this developing world, from being a young woman into how we perceive our mothers and how we feel about our bodies and who we are. And that's why I'm so grateful to have you on today, Em, to talk about that. But first off, before we dive into those conversations, for those people that are not aware of who you are and what you do, who is Emma? What is Pippin Girl? And what does she do for work?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Ash. I guess first and foremost, I am a mother. So I've got three beautiful children. I've got two girls and a boy. And they are the most wonderful people. And so alongside my husband, we are raising them in the Northern Rivers in northern New South Wales. And beautiful place of the world to be in. I am a high school biology trained teacher. And I found myself working not only doing biology, but also in wellbeing roles for years, probably like 10 so years in schools. And I guess when I started having my own children and I kind of took a step back from that world of being in a school, I just really was able to reflect on how shocking it is how little girls know about their bodies and how their bodies function. And I guess just also reflecting on my own teen years. And I guess that combination of like the struggles I had through my teen years and then seeing teen girls now really struggle through those years still for the same reasons and really not understanding the biology of their body, how to treat their bodies well, relationships, all that big stuff. That's kind of where this idea of Pippin Girl kind of came from. And so I've written kind of four magazine style books that are designed to layer the information that a young girl would need from those first conversations about puberty right through her teen years and beyond. And that kind of has catapulted me into now working and speaking in schools and traveling Australia, really speaking to young women about all of these big things. So I speak to students from year 5 right up to year 12, girls and boys, yeah, on all the big stuff. So puberty, body image, friendships, relationships, dating, sex, pornography. It's a broad range, and I actually love that because it keeps it interesting. And yeah, so that's essentially me now. That's now my full-time job is traveling Australia speaking, and I've got these books and resources on the side. And yeah, I'm so grateful to do what I get to do and that I'm trusted enough by schools and communities to come and speak to the young people about these really important issues.
Mm. I love the work that you do, and I think it's so important in this space to educate our young people on these big topics because often we tiptoe around it and we think they're not well equipped to handle this information. And I think that's where I want to put it to you. Do you think when you walk into these schools and you walk into these rooms, are these kids well equipped to be able to, one, obtain this information and then take away the information and do something about it?
Yeah, I think they're hungry for it, to be honest. I think there is such an overwhelm of information now at their fingertips that it's actually confusing for them. And I think, especially if they're coming from families that are not having these big conversations, if they don't have a reference point for like what's true, what's scientifically based, what's accurate information in terms of their bodies and health and wellness, then they don't have a lens to be able to critically analyze what they are viewing on social media and YouTube and TikTok and all of that. And so yeah, I think that they are ready for it. I think that they are actually, most young people are really hungry for it. They want truth. They want someone to tell them exactly how it is and not beat around the bush or not try and sugarcoat things. Most young people are so curious about these things. So, I mean, think about toddlers, and toddlers ask, on average, the average is like 300 questions a day or something that toddlers ask. I would think it's probably more than that. Having raised toddlers myself, I think it's like triple. But they say by the time a child reaches like 7 or 8, their curiosity goes underground. So it's still there. But by 7 or 8, they're picking up these ideas that some topics we don't talk about. Some topics have shame attached to them. And so you don't ask questions, or we don't, you can't be free in wondering about these things. And so they start to hide and mask their curiosity from year 7 and 8. I'm sorry, from 7 and 8 years of age. So I think that our kids have these big questions, but they don't always have the words or the courage to ask them. And I think it's our job as adults in this space, as teachers and educators and parents and caregivers, to preempt the information that they need, because we can't always wait for our kids to come to us with their questions, because they might not ever. And so just because our kids aren't asking these questions doesn't mean that they're not ready for the information or that they don't need the information.
Do you think there's damage in not giving them that space to ask those questions, in hiding that curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, they've done studies where the kids that were given information and education around their bodies and the way they worked in relationships actually made better life choices. They actually, held off, they delayed sexual activity, they delayed or didn't even participate in as high level risk activities through their teen years. They had better mental health, better mental well-being. There was a study they did in the US where 80% of young people said that they think that they could have made better choices had their parents had these discussions in the home. And so, yeah, I think there is definitely it's a big detriment to our young people if we're not showing up and having these conversations with them,
Mm,
because there's so much misinformation out
yeah.
there. And that's what I mean. I liken it to like surfing, for instance. Like if you're surfing a really good bank, well, I do this anyways, maybe because I'm not a great surfer, and so probably good surfers don't need to do this. But, if I know there's a wave breaking, like at a certain point, I'm like, oh, I want to stay on that bank. I often look behind me and like I find like a tree or something on the shore, or like, a pole or something, or a family sitting there set up. And I'm like, oh, if I know if I stay lined up with them, then I'll get the best waves. And for our kids, we need to be setting a reference point like that. Before they need this information. So, for example, with topics around bodies and wellness and nutrition and exercise, if we set a healthy reference point for, hey, this is what it looks like to live a balanced life, to take care of your body really well, then when they drift and when they see things on TikTok and Instagram, because we know a lot of that is misinformation, they have a reference point to compare it to and be like, oh, hang on a sec, that's actually not what's best for me. Like, that's not the best for my life, or that's not what I've necessarily been told is true. And so I think for our kids to live their best lives and catch the best waves, we need to be setting those reference points so that they can stay on the bank, so to
Mm.
speak.
I love that reference. And I'm also really interested to get your insight on this, because I hear this conversation come up so often in terms of, yes, we need to provide a reference point, but who? Because I feel sometimes we put the pressure, I think, on parents, and we know we're living in a culture where sometimes, two parents are now generally working in a household, and having
Mm.
those big conversations with sometimes three children or more or less, they don't have the capacity for that. And then we put that on schools, but sometimes schools don't always deliver it in the best way, or that they have. I've heard many stories, unfortunately, of schools still implementing different practices in terms of body shaming and meeting a
Mm.
certain weight standard. So I can see how a child can be so confused into what is right, what is wrong, when they're hearing from all these different influences what is right for them, and who are they supposed to follow, or who are they supposed to listen to. And I think then my coming back to my question is, who should be leading this reference point?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I feel like I have multiple answers to that question. I mean, ideally, if we think of the end goal, we want to be raising young people who are able to stand in their own, who are able to listen to their own body and be guided by, their own gut or intuition or whatever you like to call it, and who feel like they can stand up for themselves and that they are strong in that space and can really author their own life to a certain extent. And so if that's the end goal, then I guess as parents and educators, really, we want to be building our children's sense of self-worth and their strong sense of self and who I am in the world. And because ultimately there's always going to be information being thrown at them. And I think that comes back to, and I know you're really big on this, Ash, is a really value-based teaching, even in our homes. I think for parents, I know this is something that we're trying to do in my own home, is for my husband and I to be really clear on what our family values are, because that's your compass for life. And I think, we can think, oh, we need to be having all of these big conversations. We do. But at the same time, if we are guided by values and keep coming back to, what are our values as a family? What are your values as a human being? Then that essentially is putting a compass in our children that is going to help to guide them through all of this misinformation and back to their sense of north, their true sense of north and direction. And so I think, like, that's the goal, right? We don't want them to be, as much as we need to be giving them information when we have the chance. I know that's overwhelming for parents, for us to think that we need to have all these conversations. But I think there's a couple of things there. I think, yes, I think definitely making sure that we're equipping our children to have their own sense of north. But also surrounding them, the saying, like, it takes a village. And so knowing as well that there are multiple people in their life and in their village that they can go to. And I am really big on, Maggie Dent and other parenting experts talk about lighthouse figures. And so I think one of the best things we can do for our kids is come back to that village sense of raising a child, that it might not be us that they come to when someone's body shamed them at school. It might be their auntie, or it might be their coach down at the netball courts. And so I think even being purposeful in that, so if maybe that doesn't naturally happen for you in your community, as parents, to think, okay, how can I purposely or actually initiate this for my child? What people can I invite in and be like, hey, can you be a lighthouse figure for my daughter through her teen years? Like, can you just once a term, twice a year, can you take her out for coffee or brekkie and talk to her? Or, can you write her letters or just send her texts and check in on her every now and again? And I think inviting those people into our life and trying to come back to that village kind of community style of parenting and raising kids is really important.
Do you think our society is capable of doing that?
Oh, I think we are. I think we definitely are. Yeah. And I feel like those are basics. Yeah, I'm obviously come from, a place living in the Northern Rivers where it is quite a tight-knit community. And so I have that privilege of being like, yeah, we can. But I guess even as parents, we need to be thinking about how we're living our life, because I know for so many parents, we feel isolated in that ourselves. And so I guess it is trying to find avenues where, maybe you're going along to some parent nights at school, or you're going to some sporting club things, or, showing up and just watching your kids' soccer game or training, and just trying to position ourselves within community and different groups where we can as well, so that we ourselves are not feeling isolated in this journey. Yeah, because I think there's so many parents that feel so alone in raising young people.
Have you felt that? Have you ever felt the isolation and the overwhelm?
Overwhelmed, definitely, yes, for sure. But not probably personally, not the isolation. I feel very blessed and fortunate to be living in the village that I'm living in, where I have many great mothers and fathers around us and families around us that were really doing life together. But again, it takes effort and it takes time, and it takes, sometimes putting yourself out there a little bit and getting out of your own comfort zone to create that. It doesn't happen easily. The easy road is to be by yourself, really. Like, that's the easier option, is just to do life, in what's comfortable. But I think that there's so much fruit in taking the hard road and getting out of your comfort zone and trying to really find some people that you can do life alongside. And it's so valuable for our kids to have that.
Do you think that there's more pressure? And I'm obviously speaking from inexperience and more in like curiosity in terms of I'm not a mum, but
Mm.
I guess is there more pressure, do you feel, being a mum yourself and being in this space for women to live up to the standard of what it is to be a mum?
Oh, I think it's massive. I think it's absolutely huge at the moment. Because, Instagram, we see highlight reels, but we see highlight reels a lot of the time of motherhood as well. And you see these really polished versions, and so much overload of information. And you can easily, and this is where when I said that, yes, I definitely have felt the overwhelm, because you can sometimes be led down this path of thinking that if you miss one single opportunity to have a conversation, or you say the wrong thing when your kid says something and you don't have the right reply that's been, put out there by all the parenting experts, that you're somehow going to stuff your child up for the rest of their life, and that this is going to be like that you're
Mm.
causing damage. And I think we just have this overload of information now that makes it so hard, and you feel so much pressure as being a mum. But I've had a real, like, I guess, revelation lately of really just trusting myself more as a mum, because I really feel the pressure sometimes, I think, being a teacher and being in the space I am, for example, to make every moment with my kids a teachable moment. Like something spills on the floor and you're like, okay, well, let's all have like a sit down and let's talk through this together. And actually, it's just to go back to connection, and that not every conversation has to be a teachable moment. And I was really challenged by, I was reading this question, and the question was like, out of all the times you're talking with your kids, how much of it is just like fun connection, and how much of it is you trying to make everything a teachable moment? And I was like, ooh, or correction.
Mm.
And that really hit me hard, because I was like, yeah, you know what? Most of the time I'm talking to my kids, it's correction. And
Mm.
I'm trying to teach them, rather than just connecting and just enjoying their company and having a bit of jokes and asking questions and being curious. And so that's something as a mum that I've been really challenged on lately. I can't even remember what your question was now, but I don't know if I'm answering it, but just to be coming back to like trying to just really cut out some of the noise and stop following as many parenting experts, and try, and great that we have access to this, right? Amazing, because I think we're probably parenting in an age of awareness, where we are so much more aware of our kids' feelings and trauma studies. And, we have all this information now to bring to the party of parenting. But I think sometimes, I know as a mum, I just need to cut out the noise and unfollow a few parent experts and don't listen to so many parenting podcasts, and just connect with my kids and
Mm.
have fun with them and stay curious, and not try and make every moment a moment of correction and teaching.
It does feel like an influx, especially at the moment. I feel our society loves to jump on trends, and parenting seems to be such a big thing at the moment. And I really do feel for parents, because it's constantly pushing that whatever we do, whatever parents do, they're doing it wrong, and they need
Mm.
to be doing it better. And as you said, it's, and as I said, I'm not a parent, but I feel the pressure, and can potentially imagine myself being in that situation and feeling like I'm going to mess my kid up if I don't do this particularly, or if I've said something and oh my gosh, now that's going to affect 3 years down the track because as you said, you got access to so much information now that tells you how you impacting now affects that child so much later down the track. And then you start, I think, as well, focusing so much on what you shouldn't be doing that, as you said, you lose that connection with just enjoying being present with your child and attending to what they need and being a mum in the best way that you know how.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And I mean, I've had those moments where, like, I've had a bad day with one of my girls, and I've been like, oh my gosh, this is probably because that time when they were a baby and I let them cry for, 5 minutes while I was on the toilet. This is why, like, I caused them that. And so you go there because we have so much information. But I think just, I read another quote, I can't remember who it was by, but they said, like, if you're getting parenting right 30% of the time, that's what your kids are going to remember. And so just we're doing good at, like, good enough. And
Mm,
if we're finding parenting hard, it's because we're actually doing a really good job. And
mm,
so I think just coming back to those things, that like our very best is enough, and the basic of just connecting with our kids and listening to our kids more than what we're listening to parenting experts. Like, to be honest, like sometimes just put them on mute and go and talk to your kid, like rather than being like, oh my gosh, like Joey's going through all this stuff at school, and what should I do about it? And reading books and listening to podcasts. Just go spend some time with Joey. I'm just
yeah.
using Joey as an example, but like, go spend some time with him. Take him out for dinner. Go get a burger. Go for a bike ride. Go for a surf together, and actually just connect. And I think what you'll get out of that, actually listening to your kid and connecting them with, is probably going to be 100 times and 100-fold what you would get out of reading some more books.
I couldn't agree more. That connection, as you said, in that time, I think we all just underlying everything just want to feel seen, heard,
Mm.
and like we're of value. And I don't think that changes for a child. I think it's even more important during those developing years. And this, I think, is such an important conversation to raise that. Do you believe that when we talk about like becoming a mum and when you first started to become a mum, like what was that driver for you? Did you always want to be a mum or was it something that sort of just happened?
Yeah, I think I always had that I wanted to have kids and that I wanted to be a mum for sure. I definitely always had that in me. And I know that's not everybody, but there was definitely like, I really didn't want to have them yet. And then all of a sudden something just clicked and I was like, yep, I want to have kids now. And so, yeah, it was just like really a moment for me. And I actually then had two miscarriages. My first two pregnancies ended in miscarriage. And so then the waiting game of that, of being like, oh, I have never now wanted to have kids more, that now that I'm struggling to have them and actually keep a pregnancy. And so even that journey itself just solidified in me like how much I wanted a child. But yeah, I definitely like wasn't ready, and then I was, and I was like, "Yep, this is the right time for me now." And yeah, I mean, it happened. It's such a different journey for every mother. That entry into motherhood is something that happens differently for everyone, and it's so out of your control. And that's probably what I had never experienced in my life until trying to conceive, is how right from the start, like you're bringing a new life into this world that essentially you have some control over, but a lot of it you don't. And so that was really scary for me. Yeah.
I feel we're similar personalities, and I feel the sense of needing that control aspect and realizing at some point that you don't have control would be terrifying,
Mm,
especially with something that I don't want to say in terms of like ownership, but it's yours. Like you've created it and it's something that you want
mm.
to protect and love. And what was that feeling like? I think so often I love sitting with mums and just like understanding like what is that first feeling that if you can describe it to people when you've just realized that you have brought life into this world.
Oh, it's like unexplainable joy. Like the first moment that I met Bowie, who's my oldest daughter, I mean, it depends on your faith, but like I would think like the closest feeling that you could have to heaven and like unexplainable joy would be that. Like I've never felt anything like it in my life. It almost brings me to tears just thinking back to that moment. But just utter love. Yeah. And I think it's just that true, pure love because you are not getting anything back.
Mm.
And you know, those chemical oxytocin and all that really helps in that moment in creating that bond. But you know, you've got someone who cannot literally do anything for you, but you would give your very life for, like in
Mm.
that instant, and you've just met them for, and I know not, again, not all mothers feel like that, but that was my experience, that the minute I met her I was just like, it's always been you were always my firstborn. And I think that's for mums that are maybe listening to this and haven't conceived or having trouble conceiving or have experienced miscarriage. I know when I met my first daughter, I was like, you were always supposed to be my first baby here on earth. There wasn't a doubt about it. Like, I was like, it was always you. It just made sense. I was like, of course, like, not that losing those first two babies wasn't like the most devastating hard thing I've ever been through, but when I met her, it made sense. I was like,
Yeah.
you're my big girl, and you always have been. And just the joy and love that I felt for her, that I would do anything for her for the
Mm.
rest of her life, was, yeah, overwhelming. Yeah, but so beautiful.
Wow, I feel like I'm gonna quite drastically switch emotions here. But then, if you don't mind me asking,
No,
touching
go for
on
it.
those two miscarriages, how
Mm.
do you come back after you've lost a child not once, but then again, turning up to then go, I just want to keep at it because I think that would emotionally take so much out of you as well.
Yeah, I'd say that was probably, alongside a couple other times in my life, that was probably one of the hardest times I've ever had in my life. I think I had the hope that and again, it's such a different journey for everyone, but in my experience, I had the hope that I'd fallen pregnant twice. And so I knew that I could fall pregnant. And so again, like we were saying, like, that letting go of control, I was like, okay, what can I control here? And so I focused on that. So I did what I could in terms of, often they say they don't even look into it until you have three miscarriages. So until you have three miscarriages, they're like, it's just what happens. There's no point seeing anyone. That wasn't a good enough answer for me. I was like, I don't want to do this again. And so I went and saw a specialist and talked to him. And that just really helped me to have someone in my corner and to feel like I was doing something different the third time. I went and saw, a naturopath and just worked with a few different health professionals to help me through that first trimester. But literally, I had never in my life experienced anxiety, and was having the full paper bag moments, like where I like could not get my breath. Literally like that paper bag where you're like just trying to control your breathing. I had so many of those moments because just that fear of possibly having to go through that kind of pain and heartbreak again just, yeah, overwhelmed me. But you just get through it, like you do in life. Like you just get through it and you hang on to that hope that because the minute that I know for me, the minute I found out I was pregnant, you just instantly dream. You dream of their life and what kind of mother you're going to be, and plans and future, and what they might be like. You dream instantly. And so it's such a big grieving process, no matter what stage you lose a baby at, because you're grieving all these dreams that you all of a sudden had for your future. And I remember the job I was at the time, there was in that year, there was like multiple women around me who all fell pregnant with their first babies. And so, it was like ticking, because I had two miscarriages, it was like ticking off dates. I was like, oh, I would have, my first baby would have been here, my second baby would have been here, or I would have been already on maternity leave. I shouldn't be here. And so even that was a big process, like showing up at work and being like, I'm not supposed to be here. So there were so many layers to that. But we're so strong. We really are. And we're always stronger than what we think. And also talking about it. So having people around me that I was able to talk to, because I think that's another thing with miscarriage. It's a lot more common now. But I feel like even, you know, 9 years ago, I didn't know any of my friends, or I didn't know anyone around me that had had a miscarriage. But as soon as I did and I started talking about it, I had many women come around me and were like, I have too, and this is my story, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to get through this. And so I think just being able to open up and share publicly, which is so much more common now, and hearing other people's stories was really positive for me too.
When you were in it, did you believe you were going to be okay?
You just didn't know. I think, yeah, I just didn't know. And I think it gives you such a beautiful picture as well when you have experienced pregnancy loss, of how much of a miracle it is and how many things have to go right, like from the very start. Like it actually, as like someone who has studied science, it absolutely blows my mind how, like, to end up with the end product and a baby in your arms is an absolute miracle. And so, yeah, I think unfortunately, I think I picked up, and I've got a lot of other stories in my family as well around pregnancy loss. And so I think definitely I felt robbed of some of the joy and the bliss of thinking everything. And, that was the first time I felt pregnant. I didn't even think there was a possibility that I would lose this baby. I was just like, I'm pregnant. That's it. I'm going to have a baby in 9 months. Never did it cross my mind that possibly that wouldn't be the case. And so, yeah, I think just being then robbed of a little bit of that bliss and ignorance through pregnancy, of just knowing that it's a done deal. And yes, that's why I'm so grateful. Oh, now you went, but I'm so grateful to have my three babies. And I just feel so blessed and fortunate to have them, and to be a mum, really. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
What does being a mum give you?
Oh, wow. Ash, you really gonna what does being a oh man, I've never learned so much. Like, oh, you're really gonna get me good.
You're
Didn't
getting
think
me as
we
well.
I've never learned so much, like, about myself, as a person, and never been um I guess like pushed to be better and to be a better human, and to really like dig deep into my beliefs and my values and the things that I've picked up along the way. And I mean, as we talk a bit about body image too, I had an eating disorder as a teen. And so raising two girls, I'm so mindful that I'm like, the mountains that I conquer now, my girls are going to enjoy the view. And so I'm really, that's, I guess, is my thing. I'm like, I want to win these battles in my own mind and in my own heart, so that my daughters don't ever have to fight these battles. And so I think that's probably been one of the biggest things in motherhood for me, is being like, I just want to set them up, well, to not have these, I guess, just some of the issues and some of the things that I went through as a young person as well. And just, yeah, I don't know, just everything. Like, it's just the most beautiful, challenging, like, roller coaster of a journey, but I just wouldn't trade it for the world. Yeah, yeah.
So beautiful. I love that. And I think, in you talking about that and what it gives you and what you feel from being a mum is so special. Unfortunately, we know a lot of people don't get to experience that, but I think in
Mm,
having that gift and knowing your story as well, which I do want to touch on a little bit in terms of we have spoken previously, and I know that you have previously, undergone and experienced an eating disorder. You did mention there that you were fearful that those challenges, you wanted to almost protect your daughters from not experiencing those challenges. Have you ever come to the realization that maybe you won't be able to because you can do the best that you can, but we are living in an environment that really glamorizes and encourages messaging around
mm.
disordered eating? Have you ever thought that maybe you won't be able to fully protect them from that, and maybe they may come into face with disordered eating or eating disordered behaviors?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that thought and that realization that one day my girls are the external voices are going to be louder than the internal voice, possibly, is definitely. I wouldn't say it makes me fearful, but think I definitely, it's going to break my heart a little bit the day, that I hear them express something different to how they think about themselves right now. I mean, my girls are 8 and 6, and so at the moment, they literally still think that they are like the best people in the world. Like, my 6-year-old, she kind of has grown out of it a little bit, but she would walk through the shopping center all dressed up in the craziest costume, and she'd be like, Mum, everyone's looking at me, they think I'm amazing. And I'm like, yes, darling, like that's why everyone's looking at you. Like, her voice in her head is so positive and her internal voice is so positive. But yeah, obviously cultural voices get louder and louder as our girls start going through puberty. And so I think, again, that's just coming back to, I think as mums, it makes me fearful, but I also do know that there's so much we can do. And I think all we can do is focus on the things that we control. And I think as can control, and I think as mums, the things that we can control are guiding our girls' hearts for as long as possible in terms of what they're exposed to on social media and who they're influenced by on social media. And so delaying social media for as long as possible when they are on there, being really mindful in how we're guiding them and teaching them to critically analyze the voices that are coming in around what influences they're following, what kind of content they're consuming, what their algorithms feeding them, and really controlling their feed so that it doesn't control them. So I think there's so much we can do there as parents. I think there's so much we can do as role models for our daughters as well. And no, in no means am I perfect by this, but I read there was a reel, speaking of reels, there was a reel that popped up and it said, would you be happy if your daughter had the same relationship with food and her body and exercise that you do as a mum? And I was like, oh, wow.
Mm.
Like, would you be happy if your daughter had the same relationship with her body and the same way of thinking about food and exercise in her body? Would you be happy if your daughter was living like you were? And so that was really big for me. And I thought, yeah, you know what? I don't get this right all the time, but I know for me so far, I can say like I've actually never spoken negatively about my body in front of my girls. I'm like, for me, that's a win. And so there's things that I can do here, when, my daughter puts my hand on her belly or she's like, your belly's so squishy. I'm like, yeah, amazing, right? Like I've carried 3 humans in my belly. Like that's why it's stretchy. I've got all this loose skin because you were all the way up to my rib cage. You took up a lot of room in there. And so I think just the way that we talk about our own bodies as mums and the role model that we are in their lives in that area is so, the way we talk about food, the way that we eat. And again, that's why I come back to like what mountains are we conquering so that our daughters can enjoy the view. And I think that although the voice of culture and the hypersexualized media and the sexualization, although that those voices are very loud, we can still be such a loud presence in our daughters' world as well.
Mm.
And showing them and focusing on what our bodies can do all the time. And that's something I'm really challenged by too, is to be doing things with my body. Not because I have to, but because I get to. So I don't have to run. It's not a punishment for eating a cookie. I get to run. and that's what my body can do. And so I think just there's so much we can do as mums around language and role modeling and our own actions and behaviors and habits and routines that can really set our daughters up for success.
I think it's important you mentioned their guide. I often have this conversation with people during my own experience, and obviously me going through my own eating disorder and what I observed. It wasn't so much what was said that I latched onto. I think in the end, once I developed my eating disorder, yes, for sure, but it was what I saw. And it
Mm,
was almost that sense of, yeah, the role models that I had around me, whether it was my mum or my aunties or the women in my life where I was young, I was impressionable, and I was looking up to these women to see how a woman should be in this
mm,
world. And if they're all sort of acting in a similar way of feeling a little insecure and dropping comments certain here and there, or it's Monday, it's time to start the diet again, or look at this new ad, I'm going to start subscribing to this. It's not what you're directly saying to your child, it's what they're being exposed to. And constantly then accepting that this is how a woman should be, or this is what she should be striving to act like, to be like. And then that all of a sudden builds this foundation of what is normal for a woman to be. And I
mm,
think that that is so important when you say, it's not always about sitting down and giving them the advice or the talk. It's about you role modeling it yourself because you hear it so often and it goes through one ear and out the other. They don't take it on board because I find a lot with young people, it's they don't like being told and they won't admit it, but they observe a lot and they take on a lot with their influences and their environment. So it's
mm,
what you do, as you said, is a perfect reflection of how you can model the way for your young person to feel confident and
mm.
strong in using their internal voice.
Definitely. And I think, like showing our girls women doing amazing things too, like showing them. I mean, like the Olympics last year, I like loved watching that with my girls, and my husband was like, okay, you're being weird, like tone it down on the, like, he's like, look at her body, oh my gosh, she's so strong, and oh, did you notice how all the women look so different? He's like, okay, shush, like they get the picture. And I was like, no, I will always point this out because
Yeah.
these are the things that we need to be highlighting, and that's what I mean about just being a bit louder and being like, wow. But also just setting things up, like, in your home. And again, it comes back to values. Like, hey, do we value people for the way they look and appearance in our home? No, we don't. So, when my girls make a comment about someone else's body, or they come home and they're like, someone else has commented on their own body, I'm like, well, is that the most important thing about that person? Well, no. So why are we highlighting that then? Like, what do we value people for? Are they kind? Are they respectful? Are they fun to be around? Do they bring value to your life? Like, do they make you feel good about yourself? And so I think just there's so much we can do in just coming back to, like, okay, what do we value people for? What's important here? What kind of humans do I want to raise? Does the way they look, affect that? No, it actually doesn't. And so just trying to come away from that appearance focused,
Mm.
yeah, value, I guess, in your homes.
How do you prepare them for, obviously you mentioned, talking on the topic of puberty, and I feel that sometimes when a lot of the pressures do start to come in
Mm,
for women in particular, and I can only go from my own experience because your body starts to change or these hormones start coming in and you start expressing yourself in so many different ways that are generally uncontrollable. How do you prepare them for that pressure and that acceptance that your body is going to change at a time when you're trying to figure out who you want to be, who your friends are, and all of a sudden you go from, looking a certain way to changing at different time frames to other
mm.
women and body comparisons start coming in?
I think it's just normalizing that and taking the shame away from that, and reassuring them consistently that their body is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, and that you can actually trust your body in this process. And again, coming back to focusing on what they can control, because the puberty changes are actually completely out of their control. But I think, like, and I'm sure you have similar stories. Like, there were so many changes as I went through puberty that I had no idea that it was normal. I actually thought there was something wrong with me. And, for breast buds, for example, like, I literally thought I had a tumor and I was dying because no one had ever told me, hey, you're going to have hard lumps underneath your nipples that are really going to be painful.
Mhm.
Sorry if that's overshared for any guys
No.
listening and they're like, I didn't want to know that. But, like, these are the kind of conversations that we need to be normalizing, because they're not seeing these, no one's telling them what real women's bodies look like. on media. They're not getting those messages. Like, you know, they're deciding to grow pubic hair, for example. They're not seeing pubic hair on models on TikTok and Instagram. And so they're thinking there's something wrong with me, or, you know, I'm not feminine, or I'm not enough. I'm not good enough the way I am. And so just normalizing these changes and be like, no, that's what a normal woman's body looks like. And I think coming back to the biology is really purposeful too. Like, you know, your body's going to store fat because fat is energy. And so your body actually needs to store fat on your hips and your thighs and around your stomach, or a nice layer all over, because it's doing its job. And it's a good thing. It means you're taking care of yourself really well if your body's doing that. But also, hey, that's going to look really different for everyone. So your friend's body might store fat really differently to what your body does. And so much of this is genetics. Like, your body shape is basically genetics. There's only so much you can do to actually change your body shape. And so I think there's just so many endless conversations that we can have, but just opening this up. And I think starting with the less vulnerable stuff is easier sometimes. So starting with things like, you know, body odor and deodorant. And it's as simple, you know, as like walking down the Woolies aisle and being like, hey, do you know what these are for? Like, you're going to need this one day. It's deodorant because one day, you know, you're going to start to smell under your underarms. And, oh, we'll talk about razors, or do you know what all these period products are for? And so I think just normalizing those conversations and letting them know. And I see a little smile creep across my daughter's face when I say to her, like, you know, your body's growing beautifully, right? Like, it's growing wonderfully. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. And I see her like, oh, almost breathe a sigh of relief. Is in like, oh yeah, okay, thanks, mum. Like, I needed that reminder. And so I think just reminding our girls all the time, like, hey, you're okay. You're more
Mm.
than okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all, or maybe not all of us, but had that experience when, you know, you get your first period and then you just start bleeding. You're like, there's something wrong with me. And then
Yeah.
you find out that you're going to have this for pretty much most of your life. And that's when you think, oh my gosh, this is such an awful process, when really it is such a beautiful process when we can actually
Mm,
sit back and realize how amazing the female body is and how it continually turns up for itself and it provides for itself and it protects itself. It is
mm,
such a beautiful process to see it form to then also sort of deteriorate in such a beautiful way. And that's why I think sometimes I get really angry, not angry, but upset in the whole anti-aging process, because I think as much as we want to look at aesthetically amusing for the rest of our lives, it's also
mm,
not the way that our bodies were developed. Aging is part of the process, and it's something that
mm.
I think we should be welcoming and being thankful for, that we get to live this life where our body is formed in then order to age. And what a beautiful process to be part of.
Yeah, I completely agree. I totally agree. Yeah, definitely.
This has been an amazing conversation, and I do want to end on a couple of questions before we jump into the hindsight questions. But
Mhm.
firstly, for the mums out there that are currently feeling an overwhelm or an overload of all this information, I know we've talked about so much on this episode, but what are some top things or some reminders that even you might have mentioned through today that have really helped you during the process of tuning back the overwhelm, coming back to the small things, and really able just to tune in what it means to you to be a mom?
Mm. Yeah, I think again, it's just reiterating what I said, but I think the first one is, yeah, just turning off some of those other voices and just focusing on connection and realizing that not every conversation has to be perfect, not every parenting moment has to be perfect, because you get another chance. And that's the beauty with parenting, is that it's never like, oh, that's done, I missed my chance. No, like, you get like what, 18 years really with your kids. And I know obviously like it gets a bit harder in their teen years, but you've got time. You've got time. And so I think just giving yourself time, giving yourself that grace, uh, making sure that you're taking, I know one of the biggest things for me as a mum is making sure that my tank is as full as possible. Because I think, you know, especially as we have, if we're talking about girls, you know, and boys raising sons and daughters coming into their teen years, and when they're experiencing, you know, bigger mood emotions and, you know, dysregulation and those kind of things, it makes it 100 times worse if we as mums are also really dysregulated. And so I think just trying to, and it doesn't take much as a mum. Like, it can literally, I know for me, sometimes it's like 10 minutes of sitting and reading and having a cup of tea. And so just trying to find, I think it's unrealistic. We get shown this unrealistic picture of self-care these days. And you need to have hours at a beauty spa in the morning and, you know, be at a sauna and ice bath. And that stuff takes a huge amount of time, which for most of us as mums, we can't tick that box, and that adds sometimes even to more overwhelm. I think just coming back to focusing on mini moments of peace in your day. And so just trying to have those little like 10-minute bits, 5-minute bits here and there where you can grab a moment for yourself, literally visualize your cup filling up, and then come away being like, okay, I now have the capacity to mum well. And I think because at the end of the day, when you lie down, you just want to know that you've shown up the way that you can, as best as you could. And that doesn't always happen. And every mum would know that feeling of when your head hits the pillow and you're like, oh, I didn't mum how I wanted to today. But we always get another shot. And our kids are so gracious and they're so forgiving. And, they're not going to be seeing a therapist, years down the track, probably because of what you've done or what you've said. For most of us, we're just doing our very best. And so I think knowing your very best is enough, taking care of yourself well, and just focusing on connection. Yeah, they would
Mm.
be my three big things. Yeah.
I love that. And then finally, before I go to the bag, do you think that you're hard on yourself as a mom? Like, do you hit your pillow and are you satisfied with the job that you do most days?
Most days, most days, but I think I'm definitely hard on myself as a mum. I mean, some of it's probably personality too, but I actually probably don't know a single mum that's not hard on herself. And
Mm.
I think because it is like, it's just the biggest job in the world. And you're raising young people, and it's literally like watching your heart walk around outside your body every day. And so I think it's just, yeah, I am hard on myself, but um, it's because I really care and I really want to do it really well. And I want my kids to be able to look back and be like, yeah, mum gave us like her very best, like she did her best. And that's all I can ask. And that makes me teary too, because
Mhm.
that's all I want. And so yeah, I will keep being hard on myself because I want to show it well for my kids. Yeah.
You do have me there with one more question because I feel like I always do this, but you mentioned, I think more my curiosity and me trying to like put myself in that position, which I love to always do because I want to feel how other people feel the best that
Mm.
I can. But you said there your child is almost like your heart walking around. And for me, reflecting on that, like that would be so terrifying. How how do you trust that that's like if your heart and who you are almost is walking around out there in almost a mind that is not yours and you have no control over how that heart is going to live or survive in this world where you have experienced this world to a particular degree and know what's out there. How do you trust that that's going to be okay and let go of almost knowing that it potentially won't be? Like for me, that would just be so scary.
Yeah, and I think it is, but I think when when I say, that it is like your heart walking outside your body, but I think sometimes you probably don't let yourself fully go there as a
Yeah.
mum, to think about all the possibilities. But I think it's just knowing that for the most part, the world's good and people are good. And I guess again, it's just I don't know. You just wake up every morning and you do it. I've never probably really thought about it that deeply as to like how do you actually let your kids, and I think it's a gradual thing too, right? Like I think you can think, oh, you're just throwing your kids out in the world, but I mean you have an infant who is on you and with you 24/7 to, like it's a gradual change. So, gradually you might leave them with a grandparent for an hour while you go and, get your hair done. And that is like huge. And the whole time you're like, oh my gosh, but what if like all of a sudden something really bad happens? And so that's massive. And then, you might have your first like half a day away from your kid and then your first like night away from your kid. And so it's like a very gradual thing. And you know that they're becoming more capable and they're becoming more independent. And I think that's a beautiful thing is that you go from being really close with them as they're little and you go through these different stages of parenting. And then, by the teen years, you're not like they're not fully dependent on you. You're more there as a coach and just to coach them through life. And so there is this gradual, it's not like an instant letting go of your heart. It's like a
Mm.
gradual letting go. Um, and so I guess that makes it easier. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's just knowing that as they grow, you're equipping them with values and strength and they're capable and they're able to stand up for themselves and, all the things that, and I think that's where we come back to that reference point too. Like anyone can give your kids information, they can get information from anywhere, but they can't get information combined with your values and your family beliefs. And so I think that's where as parents we're so critical in that. And I think that when you know that you're raising really good humans and that you know you can trust them in situations and you've seen that and they've demonstrated that and you're starting with the small things, moving up to the bigger things, I think that makes it easier. Yeah.
Mm. I'll let you know when I'm there. But thank
I'll
you
let
for
you know
that.
when I'm there too, man. It's a
Yeah.
journey.
Oh, I would imagine, but it's so beautiful. I always love hearing how mums describe their feeling in terms of what it means for them to be a mum
Mm,
and because I do feel, being around mums a lot in this space and you're so hard on yourselves. You're so hard on yourselves in terms of, wanting to do the best for your children that almost sometimes, as you said, you miss out on this in the small, beautiful moments where your kids just want you to turn up and be there and that's all you just want. It's
yeah,
just the
it's so true.
presence. But beautiful conversation. I'm now going to
Thanks so
jump
much, Ash.
into the hindsight questions. We'll do a quick two. Okay, so first
Oh, I'm
one.
nervous.
So basically, hindsight questions are from last year's season. I generally like get so invested in the story that sometimes I walk away and I'm like, oh, I should have asked this. And they're normally deep questions because I'm a deep thinker. And so I just wrote out all the questions that I thought I missed over last year's season. I thought this year I'll just whip them out at the end to some people. So
Love that.
your first question, what hindsight would like to know from you, Emma, is what is your personal recipe for a good day?
Oh, personal recipe for a good day. Getting up before my kids get up is always a win. So having that time to myself, going for a long run, preferably with some friends, like seeing some friends first up, having some girlfriend time, like before the sun's even up, coming home, perfect day, kids are still in bed. And I get to like make a coffee, even have brekkie, even maybe if it's a school day, start their lunch boxes like before they go. Actually, you know what? Perfect day, my kids wouldn't be going to school and I wouldn't be doing lunch boxes. So backtrack, have a coffee, have brekkie. My kids wake up, they're all in a good mood, which like the more number of kids you have is the less possible, like the less that's going to
Chances,
happen because
yeah.
there's always one less chances that's going to happen. So all three wake up on the right side of the bed. All three are just cruisy. They maybe watch TV for an hour while I get a few things together. Day at the beach, probably with my family. Lunch out and about because on my perfect day, I'm not going to cook anything. I don't know, perfect afternoon, maybe a family movie on the couch, hanging out, some more family time. Out for dinner because, again, not cooking. Out for dinner with some friends. Afternoon session somewhere, evening session, sunset session with some friends, probably home, movie on the couch maybe with my husband or a bit of quality time. And then, yeah, that would probably be my perfect day. Yeah.
I love asking that question because when I hear the answer, it's normally very similar for a lot of people because it's so simple.
Yeah.
And everyone, you think people are going to come up with these grand ideas of, being on a holiday. And like, it would be beautiful. It would be nice to be so on a holiday. But a recipe for a good day comes down to the simple things. And a lot of the time, it's connection with the people that you value in your life and
Yeah.
doing simple things in nature. And as you said, of ease, like there's just no pressure and it's just being with the ones you love.
Yeah.
I love it. Alrighty. Question number two. What did you want people to know when they didn't believe in you?
Oh, I don't know if I can even. This is going to sound really. I just don't know if I've ever had a time where I actually didn't feel like I had people around me that really believed in me. And
I love
that's
that.
actually a really, yeah, I actually can't think that I've ever really struggled with that. I think my family and my parents have always been so supportive that I've never had a time in my life that I didn't feel like that there was someone that had my back and that there was always someone in my corner. And I think my parents probably instilled in me a pretty strong belief in myself too. And I think even from playing sport, possibly, like I've probably, yeah, fortunately, probably never really struggled with unbelief in myself. Yeah.
Mm. Even
That
during your
sometimes
eating
sounds
disorder,
like,
like, did you believe that recovery is
hmm.
possible and that you could get through that?
I actually, and I guess and you would know, Ash, because you talk to so many different people, but I think everyone experiences it so differently. I knew that I was doing it to myself. So I really actually felt a sense of like, I can, and maybe I never got to that level where I felt like it was out of control for me and that it wasn't me, that it was a different voice, but I knew that I was choosing this every day and that I was the one carrying out these actions and I was the one doing this to myself. And so I probably always knew that if I really wanted to, I could get myself out of it. If I made that decision. But the thing is, I didn't want to make that decision. Is I liked being in it, and I wanted to be small, and all those thoughts, and so. But I knew that if it came to it, I could. And so maybe the depths of my eating disorder is different to what some other people experience, or the internal voices were different. But yeah, I probably still had the belief that I probably never felt hopeless because I was really doing it to myself. It was real clear like self-harm. I was doing it for a reason. I wanted to hurt my body, but I
Mm.
knew that I could stop it. And I knew that if I wanted to change, that I could. And so I guess I still, even in those instances, had that belief in myself. Maybe it's the real like stubborn strong streak, which isn't always a good thing, but I think I always knew that I could change if I wanted to.
Why did you want to change? Because it sounds like you were very,
Well,
very
I think,
motivated not to.
yeah, I think I in it there was probably a lot of shame, probably a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, um, not a lot of value in myself, and so it really came down to a lot of self worth, and I just thought that I wasn't probably um, yeah, good enough to be better. And so I really felt like I just had to stay in this space. And it felt good to be in control of that aspect of my life. And it felt good. The pain weirdly felt good. And so I think that this is getting really deep right for the end of the podcast. But yeah, I guess in the end, I wanted to change because I could see how much it affected my relationships around me. I felt isolated. And it's such a weird thing to go back there. I mean, for me, this is a while now. So this is probably like going back like 15 years now for me. So just trying to remember those feelings. But I guess I wanted to change because I just started to think of myself differently. I just all of a sudden started to realize that the way I looked wasn't the most important thing about me, and that the damage that I was doing to my own body and to the relationships around me. And yeah, it was a long, slow journey of dipping back in and out. But yeah, eventually I just feel like my thoughts were renewed in the way that I thought about myself. Mm.
Oh, amazing. And yes, I am sorry to listeners. I feel like I've taken them on an emotional roller coaster. Just when I think like it's good, now all of a sudden I'm going to jump in and just make it go a little bit, a bit sorrow again. But that's also how I think. So thank you so much for sharing, Emma. And I'm like, congratulations on the journey that you've been on to obviously be the mum that you are today and leading the life that you want to lead. Like it's so powerful. And I really am a huge supporter of the work that you do for our
Oh,
young
likewise,
people.
Ash. Right back
I
at
think
you.
it's so important in this space, and to have someone as genuine as you really pushing this message, it's so needed. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to share your story and your conversation on here today. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I'm so glad that we've connected, Ash, and I'm cheering you on also. And thank you so much for having me today.
No, thank you. And if people want to like follow you and to obviously get a hold of some of your books, where can they locate you and where can they jump on board?
Yeah, so my Instagram at the moment, that's another story for another day, but in the process of rebranding, but at the moment it is just Pippin Girl, so Pippin.girl, and website is pippingirl.com.au. So feel free to check out resources on that and to follow me along there on Instagram.
Absolutely. And if you want Emma to come and do a talk at your school or in your community, absolutely send her an inquiry as well, because I've sat on some of the talks and it's absolutely amazing what she does. And as I said, it's very needed in this space. So thank you for jumping on and sharing this conversation. A very happy Mother's Day to all the mothers or motherly
Yeah.
figures out there. We appreciate you so much in all the efforts that you are doing, no matter what your best looks like. Thank you for all the effort that you're putting in. And as well to the listeners that are tuned in today. Thank you. We really appreciate appreciate you jumping on board and starting this conversation with us. We hope you have a great day with your family, with your friends, loved one, kids, whatever that looks like for you today, and we'll catch you guys all next time.